It's July 1863. The little Pennsylvania town of Gettysburg was about to become the site of the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. More than 160,000 soldiers would converge on these rolling hills. Now, most people probably know about Pickett's Charge. Most people probably know about Little Round Top. But today, I want to tell you about another combatant. One that wore no uniform, one that fired no rifle, one that never received credit for changing history: the weather. I'm meteorologist Mark, welcoming you to another edition of Weather and War. It's summer in Pennsylvania. Imagine standing outside on a July afternoon. Now imagine you're wearing a wool coat and a wool shirt. Why wool? Because it's durable, it's available, it's warm in winter, and it breathes in the summer. And surely it was often uncomfortable. Throw in some heavy trousers and leather boots, a hat, and the fact that many soldiers are probably carrying about 40 pounds of equipment. You have no air conditioning, you have no sports drink, you have no sunscreen. And then someone tells you to march several miles before fighting for your life. Now, the weather wasn't extreme by Pennsylvania standards this summer. High temperatures were generally in the 80s, but humidity was high. And that July sun is always relentless. And that combination made conditions miserable. Many soldiers later wrote that the heat was nearly as exhausting as the fighting itself. This is something I'm sure reenactment actors like the ones you see here can attest is true. One weather factor that often gets overlooked: dust. Thousands of men, thousands of horses, hundreds of wagons, all traveling over dry dirt roads. Every step threw more dust into the air. Imagine trying to breathe. Imagine loading a musket while coughing. Imagine trying to identify distant troops through clouds of dust. Soldiers wrote about their mouths becoming completely dry. Eyes burned, visibility suffered. The battlefield became hazy before a single cannon was fired. We usually think about dust storms happening in deserts, but when tens of thousands of soldiers disturb dry soil, you can create localized clouds of dust that dramatically reduce visibility. Something else to consider: every cannon had to be moved by horses. Every ammunition wagon pulled by horses. Every cavalry attack depended on horses. Those animals suffered in the heat just like the soldiers. A horse hauling artillery in July heat consumed tremendous amounts of water. If the horses weakened, entire battles slowed. Supply lines slowed. Movement slowed. Weather didn't just affect people, it affected transportation. So perhaps the most valuable thing on the battlefield wasn't ammunition. Maybe it was water. Thousands of soldiers desperately searched for streams and springs, such as the one seen here, Rock Creek near Gettysburg. Many accounts describe soldiers drinking from muddy creeks despite the risk of disease. Others became dehydrated before major fighting even began. Imagine how quickly thousands of thirsty men could empty nearby water sources. It makes me thirsty just thinking about it. By the afternoon of July 3rd, the fighting reached its climax. Pickett's charge failed. Thousands lay wounded across open fields. But another challenge was only beginning: July heat. Open sunlight, no antibiotics, no refrigeration, no rapid evacuation. Nearly 50,000 casualties. Killed, wounded, captured, missing over the 3 days of battle. Medical teams worked around the clock. The weather turned recovery into another battle. Now, one detail many people never hear: after the battle ended, thunderstorms moved into the area. Heavy rain complicated everything. In fact, nearly 1.5 inches of rain fell. Those dusty roads I talked about earlier, now they're mud. Ambulances struggled. Burial details became even more difficult. Lee's retreat toward Virginia also became harder. The swollen Potomac River delayed parts of the Confederate withdrawal, giving Union forces an opportunity to pursue, although they ultimately did not destroy Lee's army. Weather wasn't the only factor in the retreat, but it certainly added another challenge. The battle was over, but weather was still influencing events. When we study Gettysburg, we usually focus on the generals, the strategies, the cannons, the famous charges. But weather quietly influenced nearly every hour of the battle. It exhausted soldiers, covered roads in choking dust, strained horses, made water priceless, complicated medical care, and even followed the armies after the shooting stopped. Sometimes history isn't changed by storms alone. Sometimes history is changed simply because it was hot. I'm meteorologist Mark. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Weather and War.